Hello, everybody. Paul Sesnig here once again. In this recording, we're going to be talking about this idea it is quite possible to reach God. And I would like to state that in order to do this particular recording, I'm going to open up myself to the higher teaching that comes through from my higher self, just as it does for you. So instead of me showing everything in slides or having prepared a talk, I start off simply by inviting my guides, because I have many, as you do. I invite them to participate in this conversation, in this presentation of information we're going to be looking at right now. So before we begin, I would say, let's look at this out of the course. Reaching God is the only natural thing you can do. It is quite possible to reach God. In fact, it is very easy, because it is the most natural thing in the world. You might even say it's the only natural thing in the world that you can be doing, and that is reaching the mind of God. In this particular slide, we can see that you have a higher God self and a lower egoic self, and you have a choice of which voice you want to listen to. You are at a level of consciousness. You are consciousness itself. And you can align your thinking with that higher God self or the lower egoic self. We don't want to be hooking into the lower egoic self. The lower egoic self functions at lower levels of consciousness. I'll use this map of consciousness, which I like to do. Anything in that brown level below is where your egoic mind is thinking in limited, restricted ways of consciousness. Typically, people are down at a level of 100. A Course in Miracles puts it this way. In this world of illusions, there are two things going on: love or fear. If we're looking at fear, which is down at 100, that entire area, brown area of pride, anger, desires, fear, grief, and so on, they are all levels of fear of one kind or another. Fear can show up in endless ways. Love, unconditional love, comes direct from Prime Creator. Prime Creator, God, extends love unconditionally in everything Prime Creator does. Prime Creator created what is referred to as its only offspring, referred to as the only begotten Son of God. All that really means is Prime Creator has extended itself in what would be referred to as the sonship. That's all of us. You, me, everybody, everything is part of that extension from Prime Creator. So you can choose to think anywhere you want on this scale, but if you want to be thinking like God, you need to be up in that level of 500 plus. Unconditional love is actually 540, is where it begins. If you're at a level of reasoning, which is 400 to 499, you haven't quite broken through into love yet. There's a thin veil at 500 where love starts to come into everything you think about. and your way of looking at everything in the world. You really begin to apply love up at that level of 540. You do not want to be down in the brown area. If you're down in the brown area, know this, you're stuck. And you're stuck in an area of consciousness that is so old, it's not even appropriate today to be down there. People still do think that way, but they're just stuck in the past. I've talked before about how when Jesus was here 2,000 years ago, humanity was at a level of 97 out of 1,000. Today, humanity is roughly 210, maybe 215, and climbing up. Most people have the courage to ask the big questions. Who am I? What am I? Is there a God? How can we know the answer to these things? Why is the world still a place of so much war and people killing each other? Haven't we outgrown that yet? Are there no adults in the room? We were in a wonderful time, my friends. Really, to be in the world right now as Mother Earth is shifting into fourth density, there are souls, endless numbers of souls, who would love to be here right now. There just aren't enough bodies for them. To be here, to go through this transition. To go through this transition with Mother Earth from third into fourth density, and to think along at a fourth density way of thinking with the mind of God, is the way to do it. And even though we see all kinds of nonsense going on in the world, people killing people, ridiculous things going on, it is up to us as individuals to see things differently. That must be done at a personal level for you, for me. And as enough of us begin to see the world from a much higher, beautiful perspective, the world is shifting and will continue to shift with your help, with my help. Our minds are so powerful, so incredibly powerful, that what you think creates your life. You are where you are today because of your thinking. Your thoughts have gotten you here. Do you want to continue to move upwards? Higher levels of consciousness? Do you want to see a loving world of peace, prosperity, long life if you wish, abundance for all? Can you see that? Can you imagine that in your mind's eye? If you can look at the world news and buy into it, that's not where you want to be. News almost always looks to the negative side. That's how they build followers. Keep in mind, we are the expression of God in this world, if we're willing to be that. So, is it possible to reach God? Absolutely. It's not only possible. Again, this other verse puts it this way. It's quite possible to reach God. In fact, it's very easy because it is the most natural thing in the world. You might even say it's the only natural thing in the world you can be doing. Reaching God is the only natural thing in the world you can be doing. So if we're not doing that, if we're not speaking that mind that is in us, that comes direct from Prime Creator, if we're not speaking with that mind, what are we doing? We're reliving the past and projecting it into the future, totally overlooking now. Now is the only time there is. And yet, we're thinking of some war that's taking place and taking this precious, untouched moment to give more energy to some war taking place. When you put emotion into a war, you're creating more of the same. That's not natural. That's not coming from your true God nature, your higher God self. That's coming from looking out at a world, something that happened yesterday in the news, wondering how that's going to affect the world tomorrow. Totally overlooking now. The part of the mind that does that is the ego. I use this little drawing of this girl to point this out. The part of her thinking that would come from lower mind, if she's thinking about some news she saw yesterday about war that's taking place, that's her lower egoic self reliving something that she saw on the news this morning or yesterday, thinking about it today of how terrible it is. That's all the lower self. She can turn that off in the twinkling of an eye and speak from the higher God self, which will show her how to see the world completely from a different perception. Her perceptions of the world can change from looking at the news to seeing as the world as she would prefer to see it, to see it as the mind of God would choose to see it. So she's faced with choosing which voice to listen to. We all go through exactly the same thing all day long. Hundreds of thousands of times every day, we're deciding which voice we want to listen to. The lower egoic self or the higher God self. So, just as a reminder, to think like God means you have to think loving, unconditional thoughts. How do we do that? I want to give a bit of mention here to people who function in the brown zone. This can include a leader of a country who's abusing people. That individual would be down at a level of 100, a level of fear. What would your higher God self want to think about that dear soul? Think loving thoughts about that individual, because that person who might be leading his people down a dark path of war can't do any better. If you were in his place or her place at that level of fear, you'd do the same thing. That's a dark place to be. And people who think in such dark places have plenty of company, both physical and non-physical, who are willing to join in to that kind of dark thinking, of committing genocide, of killing others just because, of following a God who comes from a dark place. Your higher God self will tell you to love that individual and to see the light of Prime Creator in them, because that light is in them. It may seem a little dim to them because they're caught up in some darkness, but see the light in them anyway, because it is there. And perhaps that will help lighten their load. Perhaps that will help them to lift up their level of consciousness out of the doldrums of 100, up into 200 and above, where they have courage to do the right thing. Thanks everybody for watching. Isn't life a wonderful place to be right now? Absolutely beautiful. This is the end of an era, and Mother Earth is coming out of it. Since after the Second World War, Mother Earth has been steadily rising in her own level of consciousness. And those of us who are part of her are rising with her, and she's rising with us We are only a microcosm of a much larger work that's taking place. So, is it possible to think like God? Yes, it's natural. Let's do it. So if you were doing a video like this, come from that higher place within yourself where the prime creator is extending love always through you, through what you say, how you act, and always look to that connection within you because you have it within you. That higher presence of prime creator is your God self. Live it, speak it, and a whole world wakens up. And you're contributing to that. Many of you, by the way, who have chosen to come in this lifetime, have already come here with prior knowledge, the kinds of things I'm talking about right now. You've already come with this understanding within you. You're already, even from birth, understanding that there's a higher consciousness within you and that some aspects of the world are coming from a dark place. But you know differently. There are many, many young people today, many new children coming into the world, indigo children, children of higher consciousness. They're coming in at such a high level of consciousness that the dark ones can't touch them because their level of consciousness is that high. The dark ones cannot pull you down if you're living in higher levels of consciousness, such as in those blue areas where you have higher levels of reasoning and you're going into the levels of unconditional love for everyone and everything. You've come here. There are hundreds of millions of us now thinking from the higher God mind, not religious, the higher God mind, where all knowledge abides, where the Word of God that abides forever is in you. Because God placed it there. And so it's true. It's true forever. So join in. Look to the internet, to other teachers who teach higher consciousness. Plenty of them. It's wonderful. The internet is proving to be a real helpful method of reaching each other, to encourage each other, so that we all come from that higher place. There's so many other things we could talk about on the tip of my mind. I think I'll do the next video on music. I'm being shown that right now. The role that music plays in the healing of the world, or in its devastation, if it were to do that. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.